This is ContraZoom.
Where we go back and forth about film.
I'm Dakota Arsenault.
I'm Matthew Simpson.
And I'm Jeff Bulmer.
We here at ContraZoom love Canadian cinema. We also feel as Canadians that it is our duty to highlight and use our platform to champion the great work that is being made in this country that so often goes underwatched and underappreciated. Since 2022, we have been covering what is now called the Canadian Screen Awards, formerly known as the Genie Awards. And this year marks the 14th year of the CSAs, which will be handed out on Sunday, May 31st, and hosted by Andrew Fung, where previous winners of the Best Picture Prize include The Apprentice, Blackberry, Brother, Scarborough, and more. We're here today to discuss this year's crop of nominees, some rule changes that occurred, and what is now on our watch list. So this is actually the first time since episode 316, Old, Young, and New Frankenstein, where the three of us are actually all on a podcast together. So welcome back, gentlemen. Jeff, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate you coming back.
Wouldn't have missed it for the world.
You've been very busy lately doing some interviews, one including from a film that we're going to be talking about quite a bit today, and where you talked about with the director of The Things You Kill. So I'm going to make sure to link to that in the show notes, but that's going to be a film that comes up a lot today. That's a great interview. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do go and listen to that.
I will also say I have one other interview in the works for a movie that will probably come up today, and another one I'm trying to figure out, but it's a conversation that has grown stale, so I gotta pull it together again. But I'm hoping I can do some more Canadian interviews soon.
Fair. And then Matthew, it has been a little bit since you've been on this podcast. I forgot to pull what episode number it was, but it was on our A24 retrospective on Room. So it's very nice to have you back. It's been a while since we've heard your dulcet baritone voice.
Oh, thanks. And let me just say, I think we nailed that intro.
I think so too.
I think it went really well. But yeah, it's always a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry I haven't been around on the show very much, but I'm happy to be here now talking about one of my, I feel like there's 4 people in the world who really care about these things, and we are maybe 3 of them. It's so I'm glad we're all here,
The council has convened.
Yeah, certainly that, actively and openly talk about them. It's maybe I just need to expand my Canadian circle a little more, which I'm working on.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm happy to be here talking about the CSAs, because I feel like now more than ever is a time to talk about Canadian stuff.
I absolutely agree. I feel like that's a perfect segue because, Matthew, in the time since you've last been on this podcast, you launched a new publication which lines up very nicely with what we're covering today. So why don't you tell the dear listeners a little bit about Northern Reel?
Absolutely. Northern Reel is a new publication which features reviews and news and interviews and all of that kind of stuff, specifically centered on Canadian cinema. So It's been running for a couple of weeks now. It's mostly just me right now, but hopefully that'll be changing in the near future. Hint to Jeff. So we got some film reviews for some contemporary stuff. I've had a couple of interviews with some directors, which has been great. I'm trying to post some news. I'm working on a film festival listing that'll eventually go up. That's going to be a while. I have some long form stuff in the works too, but the point is that I wanted to start something to very specifically focus on Canadian cinema, and I'm having a great time doing that. It has been a very interesting time to figure out, in some cases, what exactly is Canadian cinema so far, and that's a whole other podcast, though. But yeah, it's live now. It's getting pretty good response from people in the industry that I know and from readers that have reached out to me, and I'm very happy with how it's going. And I hope you check it out because I'm having a good time doing it.
Yeah, I'll say I have a couple reviews lined up for you so far for covering the Canadian Film Festival. Won't say much more than that right now, just because I'm still figuring out how much time I have, along with having to run ContraZoom Pod and the accompanying website that has to do with all that. But this is a subject that you and I have been talking about for quite a while. I feel like you first brought this up to me, 2+ years ago. And every once in a while we'd be like, hey, wouldn't it be great if, there was something dedicated covering the Canadian movie industry. And so I'm really happy that you finally were able to build a website and start building a team up. I know behind the scenes your Awesome Friday co-host Simon Best helps out with you in terms of editorial capacity, but you're assembling something really great, and I'm very excited to be involved on the ground floor.
I'm very excited to have you. And again, hint to Jeff, if Jeff wants a byline. Jeff is invited to have a byline.
I have heard the message, and I will be sending you some messages later on.
Sounds good. And yeah, it's been really interesting. The readership is growing, which is great. And I think people who have seen it have responded really well to it. Certainly people, and this I think I expected, but certainly people like, especially like PR people and Canadian talent, have responded really positively to being like, wait a minute, only Canadian stuff? So that's been really nice. I've been granted a lot of access to the point where I'm almost underwater in terms of like screeners and like interview opportunities at the moment.
Yeah.
Which is a wonderful problem to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's once I build up a little bit of a team, the plan right now is just for contemporary stuff. But again, like I want to do some Canadian film history. I want to do some more like, historical reassessments, maybe look at previous years of the CSAs, that kind of thing. I'm very excited for all the possibilities. And I hope you check it out. I'm having a good time doing it. And it turns out, as we're about to talk about, we make a lot of good movies in Canada. I know there's a weird reputation. People will say like, oh, Canadian film, how good could that be? I hear that a lot, that kind of thing a lot. But, basically almost every movie that I've watched since I started this, which has been a few, like more than have published reviews or interviews on the site so far, basically all of them have been good. They're not all like, 10 out of 10s, but there's very few that are like actually bad, or that I did, or rather that I didn't connect with. So it's been pretty rewarding to like just be able to be like, yeah, you know what, we make a ton of good movies and we should talk about them more.
Yeah, I completely agree, and so I'm very happy that there is a space for that to now live. And I think this is also a very good segue as well, because one of the articles that you recently posted on Northern Reel was sort of announcing the nominees for this year's Canadian Screen Awards. You highlighted the film and television aspects. We're not going to be talking about the television side of things today. I just don't have the bandwidth to cover TV in a way that other people like yourself do, Matthew. So today we are solely focusing on the film side of things. But yeah, you sort of talked about the nominations, and you also highlighted that there are some changes happening. So I'd love to throw it back to you, and you kind of discuss what the state of the CSAs are for 2026.
Yeah, there's been a few major changes. Well, there's been two, I would say, major changes this year, and a number of other smaller changes. So on the TV side, they have made a few changes to the categories, including like they removed best performance in a variety or sketch series, and like best picture editing in animation. Like there's a whole bunch of categories that got removed on the TV side, or consolidated into other ones. For our purposes, they also added, and I think this is very interesting, but a CSA for like content creator of the year. So like TikToker, YouTuber, whatever, like that's interesting. But for our purposes, for film, there's been a couple of major changes. One is that there's 4 new categories they're called spotlight categories. There's one for actors, directors, writers, and producers. And they are designed to honor Canadian talent for their work in extra Canadian productions. So whether they're in like an American show or British or whatever, they can be eligible to be nominated for an award for being a Canadian in an international thing, which I think is actually pretty cool.
But also with the caveat specifically that it needs to have also filmed in Canada.
Yeah. Yes, it needs to have filmed in Canada, at least partially.
Yes.
But it can be a non-Canadian production, which is a very I mentioned before, it's been interesting figuring out what is and isn't a Canadian film, um, and that is part of this discussion, I think, because lots of stuff that's not Canadian films in Canada, and lots of stuff that is Canadian films outside of Canada, and it really comes down to not even the talent, but the money that's involved a lot of the time, which is it's more of a vibe than anything else, is the way I like to present it. Things need to have a very Canadian vibe in order to be considered. But anyway, yeah, so there's these 4 new Spotlight Awards for people who are in international production. And then the biggest change is that the 4 acting categories now can only be won by Canadian performers. In previous years, that was not true. And it's basically never been true. Lots of people you are familiar with have been nominated for and won CSAs. Paul Giamatti was nominated for a CSA for Barney's version years ago. And last year, Sebastian Stan and Cate Blanchett both won CSAs for their performances in The Apprentice and Rumors specifically, if memory serves. But this year, you cannot win a CSA for acting unless you are Canadian, which I think is a great change, personally. Because, like, otherwise people like Cate Blanchett and Sebastian Stan and Paul Giamatti are going to sweep in and take most of the awards, which, historically speaking, they have done. So yeah, those are the 2 biggest changes. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Well, let's start with you, Jeff. What are your sort of thoughts on these changes? Do you have any strong feelings one way or another on the things that Matthew just covered?
I gotta say, I didn't know about the changes the first time I looked at this year's nominations, and I did notice the lack of, I guess, really, I noticed the lack of Americans, but the lack of like non-Canadians in the acting categories, which I initially thought was a little weird because typically, I'm not going to say that those categories have not historically been dominated by Americans, but there's usually one in there that you can say, oh, they're going to win because that's Cate Blanchett or that's famous American actor. So I was a little surprised to see, no famous American actor who I'm like, that's who's going to win this time. What I learned about the changes, I was initially a little bit against it because my mind immediately goes back to Blackberry and Glenn Howerton, who I'm, very glad that Glenn Howerton won that. But I also fully recognize, the more I think about it, that's just because I like Glenn Howerton. Like, in general, this is actually a very good change, I think, because it's not fair to the amazing Canadian talent we have north of, up north here, that you look at the acting categories and you go, Quebecois, 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 Cate Blanchett, she's going to win. Like, that's not fair to the 5 Quebecois actors that I just mentioned, not by name. So, that's, in general, I think it is a good change. I am going to highlight one movie later on. I'll just kind of tease this. I'm going to highlight one movie later on that I think is deeply impacted by this change that I guess came out at a really unfortunate time because I think it would have been very, very, I think it would have been a powerhouse in acting, and it's basically not there at all because it's not eligible.
Yeah. Yeah, I also sort of have similarly complicated views on this. Like, yes, I understand the idea is so that way you don't have someone like Sebastian Stan and Cate Blanchett just sort of coming in and sweeping our awards, when this really should be to highlight Canadian cinema, Canadian creators, things like that. But like on the flip side, I don't want to punish, and I know that's not the right word because like, Cate Blanchett is not taking a role in a Canadian film for the awards or for the glory. That's obviously not her purpose. She's doing it because she believes in the script and the vision of Guy Maddin, and I'm forgetting what the co-brothers that also co-directed Rumors with Guy Maddin's name is. But like, a movie like that specifically, I'll use Rumors as an example, where this is a movie where different nationalities is a very large point of the plot. This is about a group of G7 leaders, and with the exception of a Brit playing the American president for hilarity, only I think one of them was Canadian, and that was the gentleman who played the prime minister.
Roy Dupuis, yeah.
Yeah, Roy Dupuis, who did an excellent job as playing fuckboy Justin Trudeau, basically. So just basically playing Justin Trudeau.
I guess I will also say that, I mean, unfortunately, Rumors didn't win in this category, but what you have just described is a phenomenal achievement in casting, which it was also nominated for. It did not win, though.
Yes. So, like, the idea of, quote unquote, punishing people like Cate Blanchett, who are taking a chance on smaller, riskier projects where I guarantee you she made a hell of a lot less money doing this than she does in any Hollywood movie that she has made. Things like that. Sometimes I feel like stuff like that should be recognized and awarded. Now, obviously, the flip side is, unfortunately, voters probably only are seeing a couple of the nominees. I don't know how many voters are seeing, and they see Cate Blanchett, and so they watch that movie and they go, Cate Blanchett was great, because Cate Blanchett's great in everything. And so it's easy to vote for someone like her. I'm using Cate Blanchett as an example here. Sebastian Stan, sort of same thing. Now, that movie is a little bit different because that does feel so New York, even though it was shot in Toronto. But yeah, so I definitely have mixed feelings, and I'm only saying this not to denigrate our French compatriots, but I'm looking at this year's Best Lead Performance in a Comedy Film. There are 8 nominees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 nominees. 7 of the nominees come from French language films, and 1 of them is from an English language film. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, we already know in Canada that the Quebecois industry actually the machine there actually supports their cinema. They show their movies, they screen their TV shows, they actually give money to these productions in a way that English language side does not. So it doesn't surprise me that 7 of the 8 nominees in the Best Lead Performance in a Comedy Film are in French Canadian films. But it's just something to point out because, like you had said there, Jeff, I imagine some of these French Canadian performers probably would not get nominated in favor of maybe some Hollywood performers. So that's a very interesting thing. I can think of one in particular. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Barbie Ferreira was nominated for Mile End Kicks, but because she's not Canadian, doesn't get nominated.
Well, also, you did specifically have to go to performance in a leading role comedy there. Performance in a leading role drama has, I believe, maybe, I'm not super familiar with all these films. Definitely 1 Quebecois film. I believe maybe 2. Mm-hmm. So, it's not like Anglophone films aren't getting nominated.
Yes.
It's got Best Lead Performance in a Drama has, I think, 2 Quebec films and 1 Inuk film, which I think is incredible for the record. Mm-hmm. And I think that the more... So I obviously do have the same sort of complicated feelings. Like, you want to reward the best, but I think that there's 2 things to say about it. One is that absolutely I don't know that, and I'm going to butcher this, so I'm sorry in advance, but I don't know that someone like Teresia Kepianek from Wrong Husband would be nominated if some of these other people were, like, international performers were available. And I think it's important that they are nominated,
Yeah.
And the solve for it is really easy. You just do what other award shows in other countries do and say, who's the best international performer in a Canadian production, and make 100%. An award for it. That's the thing you do.
Yeah, actually, that's a perfect solution.
Frankly, I don't know why they didn't do that, because having Sebastian Stan and Cate Blanchett as your nominees brings eyeballs to your program. Whether or not they're going to be there in attendance or not, I imagine every once in a while some of these people are.
Well, that was sort of a problem last year, right? Like, I think this is actually a pretty big reaction to last year because there's 4 acting categories for film, and 3 of them were won by Americans, and 3 of them were not present.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. Like, if they're not going to take us seriously, why should we take them seriously, right? And
Yeah.
maybe it's an
It's tough,
overcorrection
yeah.
in the short term, but it is. I think it's a positive change overall.
Yeah.
Still, ultimately, I don't disagree with anything you guys are saying, but I think it's a positive change overall.
And then I'm guessing, Jeff, what you were alluding to was the fact that cast members from The Things You Kill are ineligible, right?
Yes, cast members from the movie The Things You Kill are ineligible, and because that movie was shot entirely in Turkey and with Turkish actors, who, to my understanding, are pretty big names over there. Not as much internationally, and they're certainly not Canadian actors. That said, some of the performances in that movie are some of the best performances I've seen all year. I think they would absolutely be certainly likely nominees, if not like competitive, if not very competitive within those performance roles, if they were eligible to be nominated. And unfortunately, they aren't. So when we talk about our nominees later, I am just going to say right now, one thing that I put down as a notable thing to talk about is that I think that this year in specific, the movie most affected by that rule change is probably The Things You Kill. There are other movies that are definitely affected by that, but The Things You Kill blanked on everything in performance, even though it's, a very performance heavy film, because none of the performances are eligible.
Yeah, that is definitely the most notable aspect of this rule change, is because that very often does happen, especially, The Things You Kill was Canada's submission for the best international film at the Oscars this year. Very often it is not an English or French film. It is just a film that is produced by Canada. And so, like, is that fair that those actors are no longer eligible because they don't want, the big name American or Brit actors to win all the awards? I don't know. But yeah, as Matthew said, very easy solution is have a best international performance category, whether you want to divide that up by lead and supporting or just overall, top 8, top 10, I don't know. But yeah, seems like maybe next year we're going to have some new categories, I could only imagine.
Well, the CSAs have been pretty, like, over the years, um, have been pretty free about, adding and removing categories, which I think is a good thing, very generally speaking. But they do need to, and I think they've settled on a good set now. Um, but like, I don't think adding those things would be a deal breaker. I think it would be super positive. And if it were me, I would just do it the same way they do everything else, which is to leave it gender neutral and divide it between drama and comedy, and then done. Have 8 or 10
Yep.
nominees per category.
And I
Yep.
think that would be an amazing category to look at, because you'd get things like, this year, obviously, this wouldn't have happened, but imagine a category where Sebastian Stan and Kate Blanchett are up against Eken Koch. That's like a wild category. Like, what are these Hollywood actors doing up against these big Turkish actors? You don't see that anywhere else. That would be really cool.
It would be really cool. And to your point, like, just to like hammer home what you're talking about, I haven't seen Things You Kill because I'm a silly person. But that movie's up for best director, best picture, best screenplay. Like, it's up for a lot of the big, like, top line awards. So
Those three, yeah.
Like, it is, like, notable the performances aren't there. But again, like, I'm still coming down on the side of positive change overall.
Yes, I think that, like, there is always a danger when you make any kind of change to something big like this, like the Canadian Screen Awards, that even a positive change is going to negatively affect one thing in particular, just because that's how the cards fall. So, that's what I think happened here. Is, unfortunately, this year that happened to really hit this movie, but overall I do think this is a positive change.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, I don't want to get too bogged down in the rule stuff, but let's move over to you, Jeff. You compiled an excellent letterbox list for all the nominated films, including the shorts and things like that. So in total, there are 83 different nominated movies, and you took the time to, in the notes section of this letterbox list, to highlight all of the nominations as well. So the films are in order of how many nominations they have, that I'm going to also link to in the show notes, so that people should check out and save and use that to help them figure out what movies maybe they should watch or be on the radar. But Jeff, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the big players? What are the big movies this year?
Yeah. So, and this is one thing about the Canadian Screen Awards is they do have a lot of categories, and they have like, for example, the Oscars has one documentary category, or I guess two documentary categories. The Canadian Screen Awards have quite a few because they'll talk about like cinematography in documentaries, score in a documentary. They have a lot of categories, which means that they have a lot of movies that get nominated. And also, the Canadian Screen Awards have never been shy about occasionally nominating occasionally nominating a movie that had really good makeup and nothing else. Comparing again to the Oscars, especially in recent years, you'll get a lot of categories that are dominated by just the Best Picture nominees. In the Canadian Screen Awards, there's one or two movies this year in Best Picture that like don't really break out of Best Picture very much. The things that are in Best Picture mostly have a lot of nominees, but I think there's at least a couple in there. They're like 2 and 3 only. I mean, The Things You Kill, for example, only has 3 nominations, despite having a Best Picture nomination. And then there's something like Whistle, which has 4 nominations and never breaks out of the below the line stuff. And 2 of them are costume design and hair, and then also visual effects. Like very far down the list, but it still gets 4 nominations. Anyway, you asked me about the big players. This year, the most nominated film, 40 Acres, which is one that I think we may have talked about a little bit last year as a surprising snub. I don't know for sure if we talked about it like that, but this was one that was at Canada's top 10 last year, but then didn't actually release in theaters until July, because it had been at TIFF in 2024. And when TIFF does Canada's top 10, they will also pick things from that year's festival. So 40 Acres made it to Canada's top 10, but then actually wasn't eligible for the Canadian Screen Awards last year. That has been corrected, and this year, it's the most nominated film with 10 nominations. But interestingly enough, and this is specifically relevant to the conversation we were just having, no performance nominations here. Despite the fact that it has some pretty notable performers in it. Danielle Deadwyler and Michael Greyeyes are both in as, they're probably actually leads, but if you watch the movie, I would describe them as like supporting characters to the real leads, which are the couple's kids in the movie, which I am completely blanking on who actually played them, which I should probably bring up here. But so that's the biggest player here. But again, no performance nominations, which is interesting. I guess Danielle Deadwyler probably would have been ineligible, but Michael Greyeyes is actually...
Yeah, Danielle Deadwyler is American, so she would not be eligible, unfortunately, although she is great in the movie. But yeah, Michael Greyeyes would be.
Michael Greyeyes is interesting here, not because he just missed for this, but he also has a short film nominated, which is only nominated for one of the performances in the short film, which is not him. I don't know if he's also in the short film, but he directed it, and he's not up for best short film. That film is only up for a performance, which is interesting.
Interesting.
Anyway, the other big players here there's 3 movies with 8 nominations each. Follies, which is the big Quebecois film this year. Honey Bunch, which is a bit of a surprise for me, at least, to see here. I think this is sort of a weird indie film that's like, I haven't watched it yet, but everything I've seen about it makes it seem like it's, a little bit of an action film, a little bit of a horror film, and mostly like a psychological thriller, drama. Very, very strange movie is what it sounds like. I'm going to hopefully watch it later today, so I'll keep you posted. And then Nirvana the band, the show, the movie, which I have seen people calling a surprising snub, which is really strange because it's one of the most nominated movies here. I do think there are actually some surprising things about this movie, and we'll definitely talk about it in more length later on. But Nirvana the band, the show, the movie comes in with 8 nominations. This is one I actually wasn't sure if I'd see here because I didn't think it was going to be eligible just for release window reasons. But it did make it in, and it is nominated for, 8 awards, including 2 performances. Interestingly enough, Matt Johnson, one of the leads of the movie, nominated for supporting role. Very strange. And then the other big hitters.
You could argue that he's the supporting to Jay McCarroll's lead performance, but I will say that, like, I'm sure we'll get into it, but like, it is surprising that it's not nominated for Best Director.
Yes, that is a big surprise here, and I think that well, it's worth it to talk about Nirvana the band, the show specifically later on. So I'll hold my thoughts on that for just a moment. Other big things here: Blue Heron and Mile End Kicks, big TIFF movies. And Blue Heron specifically is like, I know everyone that I follow on Twitter has been raving about this movie since it came out as an incredible debut from Sophie Rovari, who is nominated for director and screenplay here. And yeah, anyway, that's a big nomination. And Mile End Kicks, I believe you guys already brought this one up. Probably Barbie Ferreira could have been nominated in a different year. She's obviously not in this because she is, I believe, the only non-Canadian actress in that movie. But another one that's pretty kind of obvious to see here, but did pretty well in terms of nominations. I could just go down the list. I am going to mention one more, which is Deathstalker, which is basically nominated for everything below the line. Interestingly enough, Deathstalker, directed by Steven Kostanski, does not have a nomination for Steven Kostanski, who is, however, nominated for makeup for a movie called Scared Shitless, which is a very funny movie about a monster in a toilet and the plumbers that have to kill it. So, yeah, there's a few other ones here. I think there's after 8 nominations, there's at least one movie with every number of nominations below that. I could run through the whole list, but there are 83 movies, so I'm not going to do that. But those are probably, those are the ones I just mentioned are the ones with the most nominations. I think some other heavy hitters here that are a little lower down the line are things like Spare My Bones, Coyote, which has the most nominations for a documentary with 3 nominations. And then also I would say The Things You Kill, because that one has 3 nominations. Like, first off, that was Canada's submission, as we already said, to Best International Feature at the Oscars. It was not selected there, but it has gotten, in addition to that, it has gotten quite a bit of press up here for things like a very strange release schedule in Canada. Ali Reza Khamani having a pretty scathing speech at TIFF when he was selected as one of Canada's top 10. And just in general, it's a very good film that has generated quite a bit of conversation. I think it's very competitive in the categories that it's nominated for, which include, I think Matthew already said them, but Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Director. I don't know if it wins all of those. I certainly don't think it wins all of them, but I think that especially in screenplay, it's one to watch, I would say. And I have some other notes here, but that's I think what notes I have on the heaviest hitters here.
Nice. I think that's a really good rundown of some of the most notable films that are playing. That are nominated here. I think we should kind of now transition to ones that we really liked and appreciated. So far, I've only seen 7 of the nominated films, so I definitely have a ton of homework to do. I will say, luckily, there's about, I think, close to 15 of the films that are playing on Crave. So if you subscribe to Crave, you're going to be able to watch a lot of these movies. If you live in Quebec, you could see even more of them because they have the French films on Crave, but without English subtitles. So if you speak French, that actually is pretty helpful for you. But
I was going to say, not everybody who lives in Quebec speaks French, and not everybody who speaks French lives in Quebec. There is some, you can speak French and not live in Quebec.
I thought that was illegal, Jeff. Thank you for clarifying that.
It's not. It's just a bylaw. It's not a real law.
Yeah. It's just a paper fine that you can ignore.
It's like a local ordinance. It's like.
It does feel that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'll say, I'll start off a movie that I really liked, and I know, Matthew, you're a big fan of as well, is Blue Heron. It's got 7 nominations, as Jeff said. This was a movie that won our Best Cascadian Film over at our critics group, the Cascadian Film and Television Critics Association. So seeing it come in here with 7 nominations is great. This is a movie that's already been picked up by Janus. So, this is going to be, I think, a bit of a sleeper indie hit later this year. So it's really exciting for them, especially Sophie Ramvari, who is the writer and director of this film. And I think, Matthew, you'll probably echo me in saying that Eric Bedoz is going to be a very strong frontrunner for Best Supporting Performance in a Drama. He plays the troubled son of this family, of a group of a family that's recent immigrants to Canada, and the oldest son is not taking it very well, and sort of the family's dynamic that changes due to the issues that he faces. This is a fantastic film, a little bit experimental, but in a way that it's not going to scare off the average moviegoer. Excellent movie, one that I highly recommend. And Matthew, I know you are a big fan of this one as well too.
Yeah, this is the one that I was the sort of champion of in the Cascadia Film and Television Critics Group. So I was very happy when it won. I think that Eric Bedoz is a very good shot, hopefully, at that acting award. I am not convinced that it has a chance to win Best Picture, but I'm very glad to see it in the list because it's a very affecting, it's a very personal and affecting movie, and it's one too that it's one of those films that's great, and it is whatever you're expecting it to be. It's kind of not that, but in the best way possible. And you're right, it is a little bit experimental. It does take a bit of a turn in the third act, especially, but again, in a way that's deeply affecting. It's a very emotional film, and I was very happy when I heard that Janus picked it up for distribution, and it is finally getting American distribution next month in April. And I really hope that it's one of those two films too that not enough people are going to see it, but a lot of the people who see it are probably going to connect really deeply with it, and I really hope that it makes those connections, because it is a wonderful film. I'm very happy that it's nominated so much.
I guess it's probably the best way to do this is we'll each go around, take a brief couple moments to highlight a movie that we want to. Matthew, which one that you've seen that you really connected with that you want to highlight?
I'm just going to get this out of the way right away. Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie is so far my favorite film of this year. I know it premiered at TIFF, I believe, last year.
It premiered at South by Southwest, but it was also at TIFF.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it's a last year festival film and it's a this year wide release film, and it is easily, I think, my favorite film of 2026 so far. I very much connected with each of the characters and their friendship, which feels very organic because they're best friends in real life, and they're playing heightened versions of themselves. There are no scenes that are not funny. There are a few scenes that aren't incredibly heartfelt. It's incredibly well made, and it's making a huge splash in the States in a way that Canadian films often don't. So I think it probably has a really good shot at the Best Picture win. But it's also it's a very silly movie with a very silly conceit about time travel, but it's also a very heartfelt film about friendship and what friendship means. And I love that it has been so popular this year. I love that I heard some people talking about it during festival season last year. But then when it finally came out, most people I know who've finally seen it have been where did this even come from? How do I see more of this? How do I see it again? When I saw it, I was given a screener. It was the first film that I reviewed for Northern Reel. And I watched it. And my wife was like, do you think I'd like this film? And I'm like, I don't know, but you should watch it. And because it's the kind of thing she doesn't normally sort of go for, but I thought she would this time, just because it's sort of so silly. So I put on the first 10 minutes, and then 100 minutes later we were done watching the movie. I had watched it twice in 3 days. No regrets. I am so happy this film has been made. I am so happy that it is so nominated. I can't wait to buy it on Blu-ray and watch it a million times.
Fair, yeah. I have not seen it yet, so I can't comment on it. Jeff, I know you have some strong thoughts about this film and maybe its nomination. So please briefly go off.
Oh, I mean, I guess I have some strong thoughts about its nominations, but I guess I want to echo first. I really love this movie. This is I don't know that it was my number one of last year, but it was one of my favorites of last year. It was probably my first huge surprise coming out of TIFF because I went into it with not that high, I mean, not really any expectations, and I came and it was very quickly my favorite of TIFF and pretty much stayed that way. And I just kind of fell into a bunch of Nirvana the band the show stuff this year when it came back out again, and also I live in Toronto, so they did like two pop-up shops, so I went to those and I have a picture with them now, and like it's like a whole rabbit hole now. But yeah, it's a very very good movie. Anyone who I guess is on the fence of watching it, first off, why? And second, you should go and watch it. And I think that if with this movie, everything that I've heard about it, heard about the behind the scenes, which is admittedly very little, but everything that I have heard about behind the scenes makes it sound like in making this movie, they have sort of behind the scenes, like put things in motion to restart the show, which I hope happens. And I think the way that this movie's rollout has worked and the promotion for it makes it sound like Neon is trying to help shepherd that in. So I hope that Nirvana the band, the show, the movie means that we will get Nirvana the band, the show, season 3. And it sounds like there was an entire first draft of the movie that they completely scrapped that maybe is another whole movie, depending. So that would be really cool. I'm just happy. I'm happy this movie exists in the first place because it is a very good movie. And I think that anyone asking how can I get more of this sounds like the answer is stay tuned. Um, but in regards to its nominations, I think I saw some people saying that like this was a surprising snub, and I thought that was very strange considering it has 8 nominations. However, um, notably, this is directed by Matt Johnson, who directed Blackberry, which was the like most nominated and winningest movie in Canadian Screen Award history. And maybe I'm projecting here, but it sounds like the amount that like Blackberry won when it was nominated was like a little traumatizing for people in the room because like anyone who was nominated that year, it's like, well, I'm not going to win because I'm up against Matt Johnson. And like, what do you do in that situation? And so I had heard some people calling this a bit of an overcorrection. Like Matt Johnson wasn't nominated for directing for this, which is a little surprising. And perhaps if there is any bad blood towards Matt Johnson in the CSAs, it's specifically going to be towards Matt Johnson for Blackberry. And so the narrative makes sense. I don't know if it's true, but if anyone saying that this is surprisingly few nominations for it, I kind of get it. But specifically, there's a few here that raise eyebrows, which is, for me, I am very surprised that there's no editing nomination here because the movie was basically created in the edit to hear Matt Johnson talk about it. Like they shot way more footage than is actually in the movie, and the editors kind of put it together into the final product that we see. It is very much, I think, hopefully Matthew will agree with me here. But like, if you've seen the movie, it definitely feels very much. It feels like a movie that was put together in the edit because there's just so much there that's not disparate, but it's like you can kind of see at every point how this could have gone slightly differently if they'd picked a different cut.
100%.
I don't know.
And there's
Okay.
also like I've seen them both talking about how like the whole process of making the film was they would like write scenes, they'd perform scenes, they'd improv those scenes in the moment, then they'd write about the improv, and then they'd come back and do reshoots of that scene. So like they must have so much footage to work
Oh, yeah.
with. Um, And then I just know from like I saw an interview with Matt Johnson where he talked about like just the sheer amount of like quote famous J stuff that they filmed. There's a whole montage in the middle of one of the characters becoming famous, and apparently that's like a fraction of what they shot.
Oh
So
wow.
like they could like make the whole movie again and have it be totally different. Like do the same movie with different scenes, like different
Well, this is
versions of
what's
the scenes.
exciting. This is what's exciting about the Blu-ray about this because I'm sure that not all of that will be on the Blu-ray, but at least a bunch of it will be, and that's exciting as a prospect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100% it is.
And then
We should move
also,
on though and talk about other movies though. Jeff, is there any other movies that you want to highlight?
uh, yeah, sure. I will move on from Nirvana the band. I wanted to talk about The Things You Kill. I think that this is one of the coolest movies I've seen in the last little while. It does something so strange in the plot that like or in the screenplay. Um, it has such a strange moment halfway through that I actually had to like rewind a couple of times just to make sure I was really seeing what was on my screen. I think it's a very heavy hitter in screenplay, and I actually I want to compare it a little bit to Blue Heron because Blue Heron in that third act does something very strange that you're not expecting as an audience member, and then like if you just meet the film on its level for a few minutes, you like get sucked into it, and it's a really cool choice that Sophie Lombari has done there. Alireza Khatami does something just as like does something interesting in the same vein for the second act of The Things You Kill, and it is again one of the strangest things that I've seen in a movie, and it fully works. If you know, you have to give it like 20 seconds to sink in what's actually happening, but it's an incredible ride, and it really like uh recontextualizes so much of the movie just right within that second act. So anyway, I think if there's anything that The Things You Kill is like a real one to watch in, it's screenplay because I think it has a phenomenal screenplay, and I think that it's like one there's screenplays that are very conventional and also very good, and this screenplay is like not conventional at all, and sticks with you. This is it's a really special movie for that, and so that's the first one that I really wanted to talk about.
Nice, yeah. This is one that I'm very excited to watch, especially after seeing the interview that you did with the director. So this is one that's very high on my list. I'm excited. It is a shame that it only got the 3 nominations it did. Obviously, is ineligible for the acting awards, but like kind of crazy that it only got Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay based on not only what you have said about it, but frankly, everyone that has seen this film absolutely just raving about it. So very wild to me. This is one of those quirks of the Canadian Screen Awards where every once in a while you're like, really? This only got this many nominations? I only missed here? What's going on? Like the same thing that you were saying about Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, about it missing editing and director. How is that possible when like those are, the things it was being praised about? Same with The Things You Kill. How is this the only nominations it's getting? I don't know. I guess it just has to do with the different nomination processes, and I don't exactly know how it works in terms of do you nominate by guild, things like that. I don't know.
I don't know. The thing that always gets me while we're talking about it is I don't really fully grasp always the like nomination period because like it is weird that 40 Acres is this year and not last year, and that Nirvana the band, the show, the movie is this year but not next year. So like I don't 100% get that, but I know there's reason. There's you can go read the rules. I've done it, and they're a little bit confusing. So that's something to. But like you know what? At the end of the day, like the best movies still get nominated, no matter what year they get nominated in, right? So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. And then I think now we can kind of very just quickly rattle off a couple movies that we are happy about that got nominations that are worth checking out. 2 in particular for me that I'm going to highlight. One of them is The Mother and the Bear. I saw this 2 TIFFs ago, and it only got 1 nomination, Best Hair, which is a real shame, as we were just talking about, wondering why more films aren't getting nominated. I'm guessing the cast was nominated because I don't believe they were actually Canadian, but a very endearing film about a young woman slips and gets a concussion, ends up in the hospital in a coma in Winnipeg, and so her mother comes from Korea to take care of her while she is in the hospital, and she sort of learns about her estranged daughter's life while her daughter is in a coma. So very beautiful film, very heartfelt, very funny and unique that I really loved. Would have loved to see more than one nomination. And then the other one that I want to throw out there is a documentary called Modern Horror, which is an excellent documentary based on a short film of the same name, which is based on a book of the same name by Andrea Warren, who is a sex worker in Toronto, and sort of chronicling her experience in the sex work industry that is delightfully humorous, at times painfully sad, and brutally honest at every step of the way. It was nominated for Best Editing in a Documentary and Best Original Music in a Documentary. Very odd, not nominated for Best Documentary. Don't know why. This is an absolute delight of a film. So if you have not checked it out, I highly recommend it because it really does a great job of sort of exposing what the realities of doing sex work is like for the modern whore, so to speak. So yeah, really recommend both of those films there. Matthew, are there any sort of last ones that you want to shout out?
Sure. I'd just like to add on to what you're saying, that the thing I really loved about modern horror is that it's also completely unashamed in a very positive way, which I really loved about it. Like, it's not cowering away from anything, and it's not trying to be like, we do this even though it's bad. It's like, nope, it's just work, and we're doing the work, and here's what doing the work is like, and it's great. In terms of ones I would like to shout out, there is a film I actually was kind of surprised didn't get more nominations, called Nika and Madison, which is just in cinemas now, played festivals last year, which is a very unsubtle, in a complimentary way, about the intersection of, in the Indigenous peoples of Canada and policing, about two young women who, assault a police officer in self-defense and then have to go on the run. It's great. It looks like it might not be, but as soon as you get into it, like, it's great, and also very affecting, and has 4 amazing lead performances. Two leads, 2 supporting performances. And I also just want to shout out that, I just want to say again that, Wrong Husband is an incredible movie to even exist. And I'm so happy that it's well represented here this year. It's up for Best Picture, Best Lead Performance in a Drama, Best Direction, and I think Best Supporting Performance as well. I don't actually have it in front of me at this very moment. And is it up for Best Screenplay as well? It's up for another one. Anyway, it's a wonderful film, and it's very unique. It's shot entirely in the Northwest Territories in Nunavut, and it's set around the millennium. It's spoken in Inuktitut, and it just retells one of the sort of Inuit, more famous Inuit myths. And it is one of those films that you watch it and you're like, how did this get made? This is a miracle. This is what movies can be. And it's wonderful. I'm so happy that it's nominated.
Yeah, this is a film that Jeff also did an interview with the director, Zacharias Kunuk. During TIFF, I believe you had the chance to talk to him, and it was also a great and fascinating interview.
Yeah, I hope I get the chance to talk to him again sometime, because that was I was starstruck. I'll just say that much.
Well, I mean,
but yeah, Matthew,
he directed the one of the most important films in Canadian history, which is Antuhartowat, which I think I'm mispronouncing. But The Fast Runner is easily, I think, one of the most important films in certainly modern Canadian film history. And I think this is a pretty amazing. This would be a very amazing double feature with that movie.
Yeah. I guess I'll just say Matthew took one of mine, because I was going to say Wrong Husband. Wrong Husband is especially if you have if my last experience, my last feature length experience with Zacchaeus Kunuk before this was a Tanarjuat, and that movie is, I mean, it's from almost it's from over 20 years ago, and this movie is like a really interesting. You can see how much he's changed as a director since then, in like really cool ways. Because Wrong Husband is, it's very, I almost want to say it's like psychedelic, but not in a way that is conventional. Like, not if you think of psychedelic and you think of like Hollywood movies about the 60s and drugs and stuff, it doesn't feel like that at all. But it does feel very like mythological and larger than life, and magic plays a very important role in in a way that's sort of unconventional. Like, it's not like a movie about wizards, but there's like an entire other world that is there, that's like somewhere between allegorical and real in the world of in the universe of the movie, and it's so cool. Wrong Husband, definitely, if anyone has the chance to go see it, because it is such a weird and cool movie. I never got the chance to ask him about it, but I feel like there's a lot of inspiration from Rocky in there too, in a couple of scenes, which is just, a very strange thing to say about a movie that I just talked about having not quite, but kind of wizards. So anyway, that was one of the ones I was going to highlight. The other one I wanted to talk about is a movie called Two Women, which I was lucky enough to see as part of the TIFF Secret Movie Club last year. So I want to shout out Norm Wilner, who was running the TIFF Secret Movie Club last year, for introducing me to this, because this is something that I never would have seen otherwise. But it is a hilarious Quebec sex comedy. I think it's a remake of a movie from the 70s called Two Women in Gold. And it's just really funny. It's a really, really funny sex comedy, starring Laurence Leboeuf, Corinne Gontier-Hindman, and of course Juliette Gariepi, who is going to be at the CSAs in some form every single year, I swear. But it's very funny, very good. Not much more to say about it other than go see it. Two Women. If it comes to Anglophone Canada, I think it had its Quebec premiere I think it had its Quebec run last year even. So, I'm not even sure where exactly you'd see this one, but hopefully you can see it soon, because it's worth it.
Yeah, this is one that's very high on my list. I do really enjoy Juliette Gariepi. It also has Sophie Nellis in this. So this has got some heavy hitters from the Quebec world that I'm very excited about. And just, the logline of it sounds super fascinating. Most of these nominations do come in the performance side of things and screenplay. So definitely one that I think is probably going to be a crowd favorite if they get to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a sort of a great place to sort of leave off in terms of films that we saw and that we really liked. Obviously, there's a few others that we could probably highlight, but I want to kind of turn the page and highlight maybe some movies that us three specifically are looking forward to catching up with now that the nominations are out. Oftentimes, these movies get either re-releases or finally get some screenings, or people actually just learn about them because of the CSAs. I know I sort of fall into that last category, especially films coming out of Quebec, where it's so hard to get any sort of news about movies from that side of our Canadian industry. So yeah, Jeff, let's start with you. What are a couple films that you are excited about seeing now that they're on your radar?
Well, I'm gonna probably cheat and say a bunch here, but I'll say two very quickly because I plan to watch them over the weekend, because they are possible for me to watch over the weekend. Honey Bunch and Deathstalker are both very easy for me to find. One of them is on Crave, one of them is on VOD. I'm gonna go watch those. I might watch one of those literally after we stop recording this. Those are two that I'm very excited about. But the ones I actually want to talk about, Follies is probably jumps to the top of my list for things I want to watch now, because that is, 8 nominations, biggest movie coming out of Quebec, from my understanding, which obviously my understanding of movies coming out of Quebec is incomplete, but I'm really excited to see that one. But I don't know how to see it, so we'll find out. Follow here for more information on, to follow me trying to find follies. Other things that I am very excited about: Spare My Bones, Coyote. This is one that I had heard about before. I'm not 100% sure, but it might have been at Hot Docs last year. Clearly, I missed it there, but that's the most nominated documentary here, and it sounds super interesting. So I'm hoping I can find that one somewhere. And then one that I remember you mentioning, Dakota, during TIFF, Measures for a Funeral. That's another one that I am very excited about. It only got 2 nominations here, but fewer nominations does not mean a worse film. I am very excited to try and see it because I think you spoke very highly of it at TIFF.
A correction, I did not see Measures for a Funeral during TIFF. We may have talked about it, but I didn't end up catching it.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
It was one you had been excited about at TIFF then. You just didn't see it.
Yes, yeah, and this is a director that I know, carries a lot of cachet in the industry side of things, and stars DeRay Campbell, who is also quite popular in indie filmmaking circles. All excellent picks. I've seen Deathstalker. It's a lot of fun. I think personally you're really going to enjoy it, Jeff.
Heck yeah, that's what I want to hear. So I know. I mean, I've already mentioned him a few times. Steven Kostanski is someone who I'm a big fan of. I haven't seen that much of his stuff, but he keeps popping up in things behind the scenes of things that I watch and very much enjoy. So very excited to see what he can do with what looks like his highest budget directorial effort yet.
Yeah, it's a really fun swords and sandals fantasy creature feature type of thing with some really great practical effects, because that's Kostanski's bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Matthew, what about you? What are some movies that has you excited now?
Actually, Jeff took both of mine. So Deathstalker is available to me because so in addition to being on demand, it will be on Shudder. It's a Shudder exclusive, I think, next month. So that means that I can watch it now because of reasons. But
I got that email too, so yes, you're right.
Yeah. But it is on demand. I think it's like a $3 rental on Prime or a $7 rental, $6 or $7 rental on Apple. And the key distinction here, I would just point out, is that if you're paying attention, the Apple one is 4K and the Prime one is not. So keep an eye on that. I'm very excited to see Honey Bunch. I really liked Dusty Mancinelli and Madeline Sims-Fruer's last film, Violation. So I'm very excited to see whatever they've come up with for this one. And I really like Grace Gold-Glowacki as well. So that one is like all around very exciting to me. And then the 2 sex comedies. Actually, Two Women wasn't on my radar at all, but now it is. Thank you, Jeff. And Follies as well is like very much on my list now. I was reading about it before we recorded this, and I was like, oh, that's a film I need to see. So that is and to be totally honest, like I'm going to do the same thing I tried to do last year and try and see as many of the nominees as I can before the show. And turns out now that I have a publication centered on Canadian cinema, I have both a reason and a tax write-off reason to do that. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I'm being the only person that has not seen Nirvana the Band, the show, the movie. I probably should get around to that, especially as one of the nomination leaders. I have not seen 40 Acres or Follies as well, so they're there. But some ones I'm very excited about. Milan Kicks. It does star someone I went to high school with, and that's Devin Bostick, who received the only acting nomination from this film. So it's really cool for him, and great for my old high school. So good job to them. And then one other one that that we haven't talked about yet, and that's a documentary film called Lilith Fair: Building a Mystery. This is about the famed Lilith Fair music festival that Sarah McLachlan started back in the 90s to highlight female musicians, and it was sort of like a tour, kind of like a counterpoint to Lollapalooza back in the day. And so this is one that I'm excited about. It only has one nomination, Best Feature-Length Documentary, so good for them. But the cinematography, also done by someone I went to high school with, which was very cool, and someone I was friends with, a woman named Nina. So I'm very happy for Nina and the rest of the team of Lilith Fair Building a Mystery. There's tons of great films. Like, honestly, Matthew, I'm going to do the same thing as you. I'm going to try to watch as many as I can. Jeff, I know you probably will too. When we reconvene to wrap up the Canadian Screen Awards after the May 31st ceremony, I'm sure we're going to have even more insightful things to say, and we can actually be like, this should have won. Oh, I'm disappointed this one didn't win, or more insightful thoughts other than I'm excited to watch this.
Yeah, and I mean, when we reconvene, my goal for the Canadian Screen Awards is always to try and hit half, and I have yet to do it. So maybe this is the year. But even if this is the year that I hit half, that means I still haven't seen the other half. So, frankly, when we reconvene, I will have different movies that I'm excited to see, because hopefully I will have seen the ones I'm already excited to see now.
Yeah.
Well,
if you remove the short...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you remove, not that you should, if you remove the short films and the documentaries, because that does take up a lot of the nominations, there are 47 films that were nominated. So if you can get to, I guess, about 25, you'll be more than halfway there, Jeff.
Well, we'll see.
Honestly, that is effectively my plan. I always try to start with the narrative stuff and then move on to the docs afterward. I know I should watch more docs, but it's not where I'm at. And I was going to say, though, just like not to keep self-promoting too much, but my plan is in previous years, I've always made a streaming guide for the CSAs on my other publication, which is awesomefriday.ca. This year, it'll probably be next week or the week after, just because I'm waiting on some partner setups with Just Watch. But sometime in the near future, there will be a complete streaming guide to certainly all the narrative nominees for film on Northern Reel.
It is a very handy guide that I referenced a lot last year, so I will tell you that.
That's going to help me a lot.
Honestly, and if you use it, I get like 0.2 of a cent every time you click one of those links, so please do it.
Will do.
I'll click it 10 times. You'll get 2 cents from me.
Excellent.
Yeah, you're not just getting his 2 cents on this podcast. You're going to get them on your website too. Yeah.
Tip your waitress.
On that low note, I think this is a perfect place for us to wrap up. Guys, thank you so much for coming on today to talk about the Canadian Screen Awards. I know this is, as we've said, both on this episode and offline, a subject that is very near and dear to all three of our hearts. So thank you for sharing your expertise and your passion. Matthew, we've already promoted the heck out of your news site, but please, once again, tell the fine folks where people can find your work and what you have going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's two great places to find my work now. One is northernreel.ca, which is my shiny new site, and the other one is stretch.ca, which is where I post. It's basically a link blog to, like a portfolio blog, to all of my other work. So if you want to read what I'm writing or saying on podcasts, those are the two places to do it. And you can find me on the socials. I am at SmatthewAF in most of the places, and I am most active on Threads at the moment.
Nice. And Jeff, once again, thank you to you as well for coming on the show. Where can the fine folks find your work and what do you have going on?
Well, at the moment, you can find me over on Spotify, where I have another podcast called Classic Movies Live. Recently, we have not been talking about very much Canadian cinema, but maybe that will change between now and when the Canadian Screen Awards happen. Hard to say. We kind of plan it out week by week. In the past, we have talked about some Canadian cinema here and there. And otherwise, I am most active on Twitter. I am mostly a lurker there, but occasionally I'll post something mostly on a whim. So you'll just have to follow me at UBCO CML to find out whatever that is.
Awesome. I will make sure to link to everyone's places to be found in the show notes. So make sure you check those out. As I said earlier, we'll of course be providing wrap-up coverage after the CSAs which happen on May 31st. And then also as a reminder, on April 15th is National Canadian Film Day. It is a chance that if you live in Canada, across the country, in small towns all over the place and in the big cities, there will be free screenings of Canadian films, including both new films, including plenty of films that are nominated, and classic Canadian films as well. I'm going to link to the website in the show notes, but it's canfilmday.ca, where you can look up your city and see what's playing, and there's always great stuff going on. It is a fantastic event that is put on every year. And this has been a That Shelf podcast. Visit thatshelf.com for more great film discourse. Follow the show on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at ContraZoomPod. What Canadian films were you happy to see get nominated? Leave a comment on Spotify or send us an email. Thank you to Eric and Kevin Smale for the theme music and to Stephanie Pryor for the logo design. If you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, we do post all episodes there as well. And if you really like the show, consider tipping us on coffee. Thanks for checking us out.